Here, and those who are new, I'm Pete Granger, a reef net fisherman from Bellingham, Washington. On behalf of the Executive Committee of the Local Catch Network, we're glad you're able to join us today. The Local Catch Network is a community of practice that is made up of fishermen, organizers, researchers, and consumers from across North America that are committed to providing local, healthful, low impact, and sustainable seafood via community-supported fisheries and other direct marketing arrangements. The network is supported by an executive committee made up of fishermen, technical assistance providers, and tribal representatives from the US and Canada, and has institutional support from the North American Marine Alliance and the University of Maine. We hope you're staying safe and healthy during this challenging time. During the last 9 months since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, the fishing industry has faced incredible challenges, including heightened health and safety risks, the loss of key markets, depressed prices, delayed and closed fishing seasons, just to name a few. However, amidst these challenges, we have also observed moments of brightness that warrant acknowledgement and celebration. Earlier in the pandemic, we started to hear from these examples with the Local Catch Network convening 2 forums in which nearly 500 people participated. Today's webinar represents an opportunity to come back together and to share some of these stories. Today, we're featuring key speakers who will highlight innovation, entrepreneurship, and resilience in local seafood systems and small-scale fisheries during the past 9 months, and share thoughts for future directions and opportunities. It's important to remember the bounty of the sea and its many gifts to us. And as Christy Whitmore, a First Nation member from British Columbia, reminded us at one of our earlier webinars, let us pause to reflect on what is really important: the health of our communities, our families, our people. So we're recording this session. Speakers, please keep your video function on through to the end. We also welcome our media partners and other stakeholders. I encourage you to use the chat box at the bottom of your screen to ask questions and offer comments. Also, I encourage you to stay with us till the end of the webinar, when we'll report on exciting developments for our Local Catch Network. So let's get started. I'll turn this over to Elizabeth Herendeen, who will be facilitating today's webinar. Elizabeth is Marketplace Manager for Salmon State in Alaska and a member of the Local Catch Network Executive Committee. She will explain some webinar logistics. Elizabeth?
Great, thank you, Pete, and good morning or good afternoon to all of you, depending on where you're calling from. As Pete said, I'm joining you today from Anchorage, Alaska, and I live and work on the traditional lands of the Dina people here. And just really excited to share some of the stories and storytellers that we have with us today. Pete also mentioned it's just, I think this year, maybe more than any, it's really important to take some time and space, I think, to reflect, on what we've all experienced this past year and really sharing with each other the lessons we've learned along the way, especially as we look ahead into next year. So we hope that you leave today with some new ideas and inspiration for, not just how to be using innovation to protect your bottom lines, but also to be uplifting others and really promoting Local Catch Network's core values as we move into the future together. So, we really encourage participation from all of you. And Pete said, we encourage you to use the chat bar. We'll be keeping an eye on that for questions. We'll be feeding one question to each presenter immediately after they speak, because we want to keep things flowing. But we've got a good chunk of time at the end for questions and discussion. So please use the chat function for that. And we also invite you to raise your hand at the end when we are doing our open discussion. And, we want to hear from you directly too. So yeah, we just look forward to hearing from all of you. We're really honored and excited to hear from our special guest today. And we're going to start with Hannah Harrison, who's a postdoc student at the University of Guelph. She's also the science director for the Coastal Routes Project and also the co-host of the Social Fish Sing podcast. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with her and her work. And the podcast is a production of the Coastal Routes Radio. Hannah's a social scientist who's interested in fisheries conservation, food systems, and livelihoods, and is also a former commercial fisherman in Alaska. So Hannah, with that, I'm going to turn it to you.
Thank you so much for that. Just a thumbs up that you can hear me okay. Great. Sorry, little new microphone setup here. I'd like to first thank you so much for having me, and to begin by acknowledging that today I'm joining you from the University of Guelph here in Ontario, Canada, which sits on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe peoples and on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We recognize the significance of the Dish with One Spoon covenant to this land and offer my and our respect to the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Métis neighbors who share this with us. So thank you again. I'll share my screen with you. I have just a very short presentation to offer. Okay, there we are. So I'm excited to tell you a little bit about the Coastal Routes Radio project. I guess Coastal Routes is a project funded by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, which is one of the large federal funding agencies here. And one of the cool things about this project, our focus is looking at resilience in coastal communities around North America. And when COVID happened, of course, this put a big hitch in our plans on the research that we had planned to do. But through our relationship with the local catch network, we immediately started hearing stories about the demand that many of you have seen, that huge spike in people looking for local seafood and looking for ways to access that. And part of what we'd written into this project was an opportunity to do a podcast or some sort of audio product that would share a lot of this research. And we thought, well, I guess this is the moment to start utilizing this. Everyone's home and on Zoom. We can reach out to people through that mechanism, for better or for worse, not to contribute to the Zoom fatigue to everyone here. So we've been lucky to be able to talk to, I think, well over 60 or 70 people now at this point, and over 120 interviews that are still ongoing. And we feature them as part of this Social Fish Sing podcast, which talks about the impact of COVID-19 on small scale fisheries around North America was our main focus. And we've since been able to expand into examples within Ghana as well as in Latin America. We produce the podcast for free. It's available on most major streaming platforms like Spotify or Apple and iTunes. And we've just finished our 17th episode with several more coming. I want to introduce the team to you as a whole. So I work with a really exceptional group of people here at the University of Guelph, Dr. Philip Loring, who this photo is actually taken off the Kenai River, where we met originally in Alaska when I was a master's student at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. I'm originally from Homer, and so the Alaskan fisheries were very much part of my introduction into fisheries research. I also work with Emily D'Souza, who is a master's student in the Coastal Routes Project and the Coastal Routes Lab. And she is really remarkable in that she has an incredible background of both social media and public engagement through blogging and through Instagram, as well as a deep and passionate love of seafood and fisheries research. And so she's really brought a tremendous amount to this team to be able to link us to the wider world of the internet and how people are exchanging information today, since I think, at least I'll speak for myself, that hasn't been a strong suit for me. And we of course do this through a collaboration with many supporters. And so I'm deeply grateful to the local catch network in particular, but also to all of our other partners shown here that have offered funding, support, and sharing the podcast on their platforms, connecting us with people who have been willing to interview. This is just a list of the different episodes that we've done so far. And it's really been, I think I'll touch on some of the key themes that we've seen through this. It's been really remarkable that the stories we are hearing, that the interviews we are featuring with fishing men and women in the local catch network and outside of it, that those stories are so reflective and accurate in describing the major changes that we've seen in COVID when it comes to our globalized and our local seafood systems and food systems as a whole. It was almost like having a crystal ball that we'd call someone up from the local catch network. And in particular, we have 5 or 6 people from the network who have been willing to interview with us every month throughout this entire period of COVID. And we would talk to them and hear something that was going on in their community. And then, as if by magic, sometimes the next day it would be a headline in the paper, that same topic that they had observed, that same phenomenon. And now in our most recent episode here on the right side of your screen, you'll see Fisheries research. This is episode 17, and this has been a cool episode to do where we've talked to other research teams also focused on fisheries topics, and found that many of the things we've heard throughout this process are now showing up in empirical research now that people have had time to get their feet back under them and really start to reach out to their networks and see what's there. So it's really been a fantastic experience for us. And honestly, from a personal point of view, a wonderful way to keep in touch, to stay engaged with all of you, with all of the fishing men and women out there, and hear your stories and understand the things that you're going through. And in particular, how resilient everyone has been and the way that they've really innovated around the many, many challenges that have been faced. And I think for us as fisheries researchers outside of COVID, getting to also see how COVID kind of increases the complexity of challenges that were already there, such as the decline of working waterfronts or fisheries management challenges, major disasters that have happened within the fishing industry, et cetera. So with that, I don't want to go on for too long. I want to just tell you how grateful we are. Thank you, thank you, thank you to everyone who has participated in an interview with us, to everyone who has connected us with someone else in your network. We've just really been able to speak to far more people in far more contexts than we really thought would be possible. And that's only because everyone was so willing to share that with us. So we are incredibly grateful for that, and our deepest appreciation to this network and to everyone in it. I'm very happy to answer, I guess, a question after this. And of course, anything that people are curious about at the end. I can also put the link to the podcast in the chat if people are interested in following up, and our information is there as well. So if you have a story that you would like to tell, ultimately, this is a storytelling podcast and we want to highlight your story. So if you have a story for us, or you've thought of something that you think we should look into, please share it. We're always really happy to follow up on those things.
Great. Thank you so much, Hannah. Don't see, yeah, feel free to use the chat again to post your questions. But I'm curious, Hannah, I don't know, like, was there one story or interview in particular that just like was your favorite, or just really surprising, or just really sticks out in your mind, especially in the context of COVID and just this very tumultuous year? Like what really stuck with you of all the folks?
Oh, that's a very good question. I've been interviewing for a long time and have done many, many interviews in my career. The one that got to me in this process, that kind of I needed a little break during the actual conversation, was in a recent one we did about the Yukon. And I talked with Dr. Stephanie Quinn Davidson, who works with the Yukon Intertribal Fisheries Commission up there. And she was telling me about the calls that she had been getting from people out in the villages along the Yukon who the salmon run didn't show up this year. The chums were not there. And so they were worried about culling their dog teams. And that was a tough story, but it had a really wonderful ending, which thank God, where she was able to kind of put the call out on Twitter and through avenues like this podcast and others, and a bunch of dog food companies got behind those efforts, and people donated quite a lot of support to be able to purchase those much needed bags of food and have them shipped out to those communities. So very grateful that there was a good ending to that. But wow, that really, the way that COVID took everyone's resources that they otherwise would have used to compensate for that bad salmon run, just really, I think, touched me in what a sensitive system we all live in, and the many challenges that people faced, and how COVID just amplified that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's definitely a theme we'll be hearing throughout the upcoming speakers. And Hannah, I'll just flag, there's a question in the chat box and I might let you respond to that directly. So it's just in writing, sort of upcoming
Sure.
dates for future episodes you have.
Yeah, I'll put that in the chat.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we're going to continue on, and next we're going to hear from Frank Salustri, and I hope I said your last name right, from Rhode Island, and he's been a big part of helping create an artisanal fisherman-led cooperative located in Westerly, Rhode Island. Frank is an active commercial fisherman and brings tremendous experience spanning both fishing and the hospitality industries. And he's going to share with us sort of the concept and the vision behind this fishmonger cooperative and his efforts to just help providing the local artisanal fishing community with access to legal and physical infrastructure and sort of the barriers that can often keep small scale fishermen from accessing new markets. So Frank, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, well said. Now I got to kind of revamp what I was going to say. You kind of hit all the points there. Yeah, glad to be here. Glad to see some familiar faces. Where should I start now that you did such a good job summing up what it is we are.
Stealing your show. No, I think, well, I mean, I think we'd love to hear. I think there's a lot of folks out there, wondering about, especially today's world, just how to work together. Like, what does it look like to form a cooperative and working with other fishermen, and maybe sharing the origin story behind what you're developing.
Yeah, so 3 years ago, I would say, Sean can check my math. I was working with Dr. Dish and I got my commercial fishing license here in Rhode Island and made the transition from seafood and hospitality to fishing full time. And one of the big hurdles was the difficulty to make that transition, to come into fishing and now let it be my life, be what it was that funded my day-to-day living. The price at the dock wasn't comparable to what my living overhead was, and that's what kind of led to the idea of the co-op and having making what I knew with the connections, kind of bringing fishermen and ownership to the end resource a little closer, if that makes sense. So about a year ago, I got linked up with some fishermen, courtesy of Eating with the Ecosystem, if people are familiar with them, in Westerly, Rhode Island. And we kind of came to the conclusion, well, they had also understanding, being what you mentioned, artisanal fishing, commercial fishermen, but on a small scale. We harvest, we make landings, we are commercial fishermen, but we don't land large quantities of fish, just courtesy of our gear type and our restrictions. And we still had to sell to a market that was more comparable to landing 10,000 pounds, 5,000 pounds of fish. So that, we realized that if we co-op together, we can land more fish and sell directly and, kind of even the playing field without disrupting a aspect of the fishing industry that needs to exist. So, we teamed up, we took on, I had HACCP plans even before meeting them. I had developed a HACCP plan, my experience with Dr. Dish and knowing what it was, some of the requirements to catch a fish, process a fish, sell a fish, repeat. We had a HACCP plan, I had my dealer license, I had my commercial license, and the next step was facility, and that's what we are coming out of hopefully by the end of this year. Questions, please.
Yeah, if anyone has questions. Otherwise, I'm curious to hear, Frank, just about sort of your customers and, what have you all been seeing as far as demand? I think we've all read a lot about increased demand this year for, consumers wanting to buy direct from the source. And what have you guys experienced in Rhode Island?
Yeah, so right before COVID hit, Rhode Island, excuse me, as a state, we began these seafood collaborative talks, which were, all the regulating stakeholders in the industry and a bunch of industry stakeholders. And the state came to, a conclusion that we have to have more access to the seafood that we catch here for, food insecurity issues that have been clearly outlined by the state and economic benefits. So, once COVID hit, that became very real once again. Rhode Island, um, in its unique little world, gets affected pretty greatly when these things happen. COVID, 2008 and 9/11 are the examples that I use where the markets get disrupted, and it makes it very difficult on the dock, on the boat. So when that happened, the demand skyrocketed for access. A direct sale dealer license was put out by the state, creating more access for fishermen to sell directly to the dock. It still has some kinks to work out, but it was big, and it brought everybody from the consumer, the industry stakeholder, and the regulator end kind of like all on the same page. That we need to figure out how we make access to the fish that we catch as fishermen, because Rhode Island does have a large, per capita artisanal fishing. A lot of the fishermen, a lot of the license holders I would consider artisanal fishermen, don't land more than 1,000 pounds of fish, a trip kind of deal. So.
Great. And just one follow-up question. We have a lot of great questions from people in the chat, and we're going to get to more of them later. But one I'll just ask you before we move on is, could you just describe a little bit more the structure of the cooperative? Is there an annual fee? What does it look like cooperating with other vendors? And also, how many members do you have in the cooperative? How many fishermen are you sourcing from?
Good question. And I did see co-packing pop up in here. Yes, I brought the concept to life being a part of a co-packing facility here in Rhode Island. There are 4 of us in the co-op right now, and we batting out the facility and how it looks. That is still up in the air. So we are set, and the interesting part about it was there was not much to play off in the realm of structuring it, pricing it, doing things like that. So we are still to be determined on how that's going to work. But what we do know is, kind of who we're going to work with, how we're going to distribute it, trying to stick to the principle in the fishing industry of like touch it only once. We kind of look at it as if we touch it like 1.5 times. We catch it, we land it, we do some type of processing, and it's gone to go again. So we do work with we are going to be in a relationship with a local distributor that already moves farm products in the southern New England region to southern Rhode Island. So trying not to do everything under one roof is kind of a concept that we have to abide by. There's only so much time in the day to be fishermen and to be processors and shippers. So there's still a lot that it's going to play itself out, because it's very new for the region and for the state. I know in other parts of the country, people are a little further along in some of these fisherman co-op models. But given Rhode Island's now push and need for local seafood and it being new here, we're still playing that out.
Great. Thank you so much. No, it's exciting. And I know here in Alaska, fishermen are often talking about cooperatives, and it's really hard to get one going and off the ground and figuring that out. So thank you for sharing your experiences. We're going to travel over to Bellingham, Washington, where another group of fishermen have been working together and cooperating to create a new market. And so we're going to hear from Ficus Chan, who's been busy helping set up and launch the Bellingham Dockside Market. And Ficus was born and raised in British Columbia, where he studied renewable resource management, and he continues to work in fisheries management and environmental education. Ficus now lives in Washington State and helps run a family commercial crab fishing operation. He's also a fish buyer and retailer at the Bellingham Dockside Market. And as a person who works and plays all around the Salish Sea in fisheries management as a commercial fisherman and outdoorsman, Ficus has a unique perspective and desire and dream for the fisheries and natural resources and food community of the Salish Sea. So Ficus, thank you so much for being here, and we're excited to hear from you.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, I'm gonna try my best to fit everything in a 5-minute time frame here, but I think today what I'm really trying to share is, well, yes, we have the Bellingham Dockside Market. It just recently started and it's very exciting. It's been very successful and fun to be a part of. But I'm just gonna basically tell a little bit about my story of how I got to the point of selling to a direct market. And so yes, my name is Ficus Chan, and I do many different things. And so I'll try to focus in on what we're talking about here a little bit, but originally from Vancouver, Canada, where I worked in fisheries and environmental education. And I currently still work up there for the seasonally for the commercial salmon fishery, herring sometimes, and but mainly every year I go up and work the spot prawn fishery. And so there were some interesting COVID challenges that we faced with that this year, which I'll share later if anybody's interested. I moved down to Bellingham, Washington. My wife's family's from here. She was born in Alaska, but grew up in Bellingham. And her dad is a commercial fisherman, previously a set netter up in Bristol Bay, and then also a Dungeness crabber down out of Bellingham here. So a few years, I've always loved what I do. I've been very fortunate to basically play outside all my career, in the forests, to the sea, all up and down the coast and around Salish Sea and the west coast of Vancouver Island. And he basically asked me if I was interested in moving down to help him fish. And if I did that, then eventually our family would inherit the boat and the permits and all that kind of stuff, which was just something that I couldn't pass up. It was a great thing that he offered to our family. So I got my visa, my resident status, moved down to Bellingham, which I'm fortunate that it's really only an hour away from my home, Vancouver, and without the border and traffic, it's pretty quick zip back up over the border if I needed to. And it's nice that I can continue to work in fisheries up there as well too. But when I moved down here to fish, everything was great and fine. I really loved being out on the water and learning and growing in the local fishery here. I think the hardest thing was just that I was not making enough money to support my family. It was harder in Vancouver to support my family because cost of living's so high. Down here, it's a little bit different, but anyhow, we needed to find some more income. And so I started thinking about maybe marketing my own crabs, or trying to find a way, if I could, to get more money for our crabs. And fortunately, when I first moved down to Bellingham, not long afterwards, actually, and started fishing and working down here, we met Pete and Deb Granger, and they were starting up the Sea Feast festival down here, and my family got involved with that and had lots of fun with it. And at the very same time, there was a wild seafood exchange here in Bellingham, something that, anyway, it's a wonderful event that's put together to help fishermen learn more about direct selling, who all the industry players are, and all the different things that you should consider if you're gonna try to sell your own catch. And so with that, I started to grow hope that I could possibly market my own product. And so I started a little company called Crab Bellingham just to try to sell my own catch. And I used the Sea Feast event as well as email and social media to just try to get the word out that I have live crabs for sale. And one thing about Bellingham, I come from Vancouver and from Chinese background, and we eat a lot of seafood. And I remember once going out for family dinner, and my cousins and I, we counted probably at least 16 different creatures that we ate at our dinner table that day. It's just something that we grew up with, fresh, live, lots of different kind of seafood and other good things that we eat. And at the supermarkets, you can always buy live crab, live fish, and all that kind of stuff. But down here in Bellingham, went to the supermarket and everything was like, all the crabs were whole cooked, previously frozen and thawed. And that was a bit of a shock to me. I was very surprised. And especially as a crab fisherman, I just thought, why wouldn't people want to buy this live product over the frozen stuff? Anyhow, that's just part of my thinking. I made the attempt to try to sell the live crabs, did a few different events in around Bellingham, and it was a very, very poor response and turnout. And I sold a couple of crabs. There was one restaurant that bought from me 3 times, I think. And otherwise, I had a few regular people who wanted to buy crabs, but it was really only 2 or 3 people. And so I started feeling pretty discouraged. And the fact that it's a live crab fishery, we're fishing every day once the season starts. It's derby style, so you just got to go out and get it while you can. And if I took a day to be at the dock to sell my crabs, I couldn't go out and fish. And so there was a lot of challenges there. I didn't have time or energy to market anything. And I got to the point where I just thought, well, I think I'm just going to have to stop doing this right now. And so I actually started another company. It's called Sailor Sea Trading Company, where I am a fish buyer. And so I'm basically selling my own crabs and other fishermen's crabs to a wholesale buyer in Canada. And so I'm dealing fish for them and writing fish tickets, just a way to make a little bit of extra money. This late summer, the Grangers again contacted me and other local fishermen saying that they are wanting to start up this dockside market and whether or not we'd want to listen in and see if we could participate. So it was fun to listen in and very excited to hear about the opportunity. And the next thing I knew, I was asked if I wanted to be on the committee, and probably within 4 weeks or so, we were on the committee, we started working, and then we started selling at the market. It was a very fast turnaround. It was quite an amazing feat of organization, I really think, but it worked. And we started selling this October, and we've had 4 events, I believe, and they were all great success. So it's funny because Sarah Fiskin, she's on this right now, she in September asked me if I wanted to put my name out on the local catch, I think, fisherman list. And I said to her at the time, like, I don't think I can do this. I haven't had much chance to sell crab. The season is so unpredictable, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to retail anymore. And so at the time I declined. And but then, just a few weeks later, here we are selling, and have been doing quite well with it. So we're actually off the water right now for a little bit until we still have some quota. We're waiting to get back on the water, but there have been a dockside market event since we finished fishing for the time being. And so I wanted to still sell. And because I'm a wholesale buyer, I learn about other fisheries that are available here. And I was able to purchase some green sea urchins from the local tribe that we are on their lands of here in Bellingham, the Lummies. And was able to purchase some green sea urchins from them and introduce that to Bellingham. And it was a great response. People bought it. They came, they bought, they ate, they enjoyed, and some people even wept. They were so happy that there was this product available, and it triggered, feelings of emotions for them, and memories and all sorts of different things. So anyhow, it's all been a very fun and successful startup, and we're looking forward to growing it more. We're just really at the very beginning stages of this, and there's so much more for us to develop and grow into that it's just exciting for all of us right now. I just want to say as well that I was asked to just do some considerations for COVID here. I have actually found that COVID has not affected me personally in my work. I work in Canada and in Washington here in fisheries, and there were some delays and some safety things that we had to deal with and work with. But We were able to still run all the fisheries that I'm normally participating in. And not only that, but the market has actually been pretty good for the main fishery I work in Canada is spot prawn fishery right now. That's an annual thing that I do. And then of course, Dungeness crab down here in Bellingham, and the market, international market's been good. People are still wanting the product. So, so yeah, it hasn't affected me directly yet, and hopefully it won't. But I think I'll just leave it at that right now and let you guys ask any questions if there are any. And yeah, thanks again for having me.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Vicus. And just, yeah, such a great success story. And I know it's still evolving, but thank you for sharing what you guys have done there. I think we're gonna move on unless there's any burning questions. But again, as you guys digest all this, just stick your questions in the chat and we'll have time at the end here. But I want to move on to Lauren Mitchell, who is joining us from Sitka, Alaska. And Lauren works closely with Linda Benkin, who many of you know at the Alaska Longline Fishermen's Association, as well as the Alaska Sustainable Fisheries Trust. And for the last 15 years, Lauren's worked on the water, working her way up to captain of a commercial fishing tender. And for the last 5 years, she's been working extensively with the local fishing fleet in Sitka, serving as deckhand as well as captain. And this year, Lauren's been really central to helping deliver seafood to families around Southeast Alaska, families who have been in need during COVID-19. And she's going to share some of the milestones and lessons learned from Alpha's new seafood donation program. So Lauren, the floor is yours.
Morning, it's morning here. So thanks for having us. I'm actually standing in today for our director, Willow Moore. She's up against some really important deadlines for our seafood donation program. So she was unable to join this morning. So I'm here for her. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. Bear with me. Oh. All right. Am I on there? Okay. Sorry, 1 second. My notes are not showing on my screen. So I'm going to pause for just a second. Excuse me. Elizabeth, do you want to come back to me? I'm having a bit of a technical issue. I'm really sorry. Is that possible?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Shireen, if you are there and ready, there you are. Lots of faces on the screen. Yeah, that's fine. So if that's okay with you, Shireen.
I'm fine with that, thanks.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll come back to you, Lauren. So we'll now hear from Shireen Davis with Chatham Harvesters Cooperative in Massachusetts. A former commercial fisherman, Shireen is a lifelong advocate of small-scale community seafood, and she serves as the interim manager of the Chatham Harvesters Cooperative, has also been really instrumental in bringing a sustainability planning concept to her community called Chatham 365. She's co-chaired its task force and also serves on the town select board as chair. And she resides in Chatham with her husband, Ernie, who's a weir fisherman. So Shireen, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, and I'm very honored to be part of this panel today. I just want to say to Frank, I can so relate to your story. I think we probably are paralleling each other in our experiences as in the infancy of cooperative, of a cooperative. Some of the things that I just want to mention is the experience of what we've been dealing with in our world has been so surreal, and I feel that a lot of people have been isolated, but I've seen so many COVID-19 positives, I'll call them, in what relationships we've built with the community through the Harvesters Cooperative. The cooperative is fisherman owned, and it was established in 2016 by a group of fishermen with a common value system who sought stable markets and fair prices for their seafood through opportunities that could benefit and enhance the quality of life of their fishing families and community. And as experienced commercial fishermen, they saw, they were able to evaluate that the food supply chain for Cape harvested seafood, when they looked at that, they found that at least 75% of their harvests are shipped away to New York, Boston, and New Bedford domestic markets and restaurants, or they're shipped internationally to be processed and sold into other countries, or shipped back and then maybe even shipped back to the United States as filleted fish and value-added seafood products. So what we see is the industrial seafood supply chain is not designed to serve local or regional markets, but to sell a volume of seafood at very low prices. And what we're seeing that was replacing our fish here was out of region and often foreign cod and farm-raised salmon that dominate. They certainly dominate our local restaurants menu. So I'm preaching to the crowd here, and probably I gleaned this off the Local Catch website, but it's so true that when I say food sovereignty or security is the right of people to healthy and culturally appropriate food, and in that security, it gives more control of the food systems to the producers. More control of the food systems allows for a symbiotic relationship in the community, especially where seafood is in season and readily available. And that's what we found during the COVID experience this spring. So we also found out that it makes little sense to pay fishermen a price that doesn't cover their real cost of operation, while the consumer is paying more than they should for packaged or frozen or even days old seafood trucked hundreds and thousands of miles, when they can have fresh fish steps away from their homes. Very similar to what Frank was talking about in Rhode Island. So in looking at how the harvesters could supply our community with fresh, healthy protein, we have been challenged by municipal and state regulatory rules and regulations and processes. Even our own town regulations were an impediment to us to be able to do that. We also had a lack of infrastructure and expensive permitting process. So when you're looking at that as a sole proprietor fisherman, it can be cumbersome. It makes it difficult for any fisherman to do any direct sales or markets or events. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I just lost my way because I'm reading my notes. During the onset of COVID-19, we had to supply more local markets because obviously we felt that we needed that to happen. People were wanting to trust where their food was coming from. And so they were looking for consistent sources of fresh seafood and shellfish. And our dayboat scallop and weir caught fish direct sales programs were developed and permitted through our Massachusetts Department of Marine Fisheries. We found our fishermen members were able to sell directly to the community at a price that was 50% above typical auction wholesale prices per pound. And we were able to deliver to the customer at least 20% less than the typical retail price per pound. We ended up that one of the boats ended up, we ended up as co-op with 875 community members who signed on for these weekly pickups direct to from the dock. They wanted seafood this way. They wanted to connect with the local boats again. They wanted to share their food experiences. And some of them that were older were remembering that this was how it was back in the 70s and 80s before permitting got so restrictive and regulations were restricted. We also, during the spring, we supported a free Chatham Chowder program, and we were able to bring a partnership of shellfish harvesters who had really lost their markets. Their buyers were telling them, you can go today, but you can't go tomorrow, or maybe we'll get you in the queue for next week to be able to sell your product. We partnered some harvesters like that with a local restaurant and a nonprofit who had funding to enable to be able to feed senior citizens and school-age families and others during the spring, this spring when these were people that were needing free meal programs, were out of work, and it helped. We helped the local shell fishermen who had uncertain markets, and we did this through a permitted facility. And what had happened is we could have expanded this program really greatly, but we're dealing with a small scale permitted infrastructure who could not accommodate the expansion. and the demand for this. So now what we're looking for, we're in the position that we can probably help our neighbors to create programs that are supported by an anchor seafood processing facility. We can do wholesale fish sales, processing, direct boat sales, community supported fisheries, restaurant supported fisheries, virtual fish markets, fishermen's marketplaces. There's so many programs that if we, fingers are crossed, we're working on this, get our own facility, we'll be able to create this opportunity for independent fishermen to stay independent, be members of the co-op, and still be able to run their own businesses with an infrastructure that has these programs in place to help them in various aspects of marketing, permitting, and all that. Finally, with the constant changes in the life of fishermen and the uncertainty of markets that have risen from COVID-19, one place where we can take back control of our relationship with those who eat their catch, the price the consumer pays and what the fishermen get paid for, is within this sort of system that we're trying to create here in Chatham. This is really how we create a community value-based opportunity and where people are connected again in a more cohesive way. So thank you, and I'll turn it back to the facilitators.
Great. Thank you so much, Shireen. We're gonna again just kind of save questions here for the very end, but please put them in the chat. We're gonna go back to Lauren, and actually there's some great parallels with what Shireen just shared, especially as far as getting creative during COVID when it comes to accessing new markets, helping fishermen get some stability and certainty with their markets, by getting creative and also helping those in need. So Lauren, if you're ready to go, it's all yours.
All right, sorry about that, everyone, and thanks for bearing with me. This is my first time presenting. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again. All right. So once again, I am here for Willa Moore, but I work directly under her and Linda Bankin for the Alaska Longline Fishermen's Association, as well as the Alaska Sustainable Fisheries Trust. They're two independent organizations, but we do a lot of our programs in conjunction. So it's kind of like you have two circles and you put them together. A lot of our programs are very much put together. So the program I'm going to talk about today also involves Alaskan Zone, which is another program that we work with very closely. So Alaskan Zone was one of the first community supported fisheries in Alaska. Back in 2009, they were formed, and we continue to deliver fish to lower 48 as well as Alaskans from most of them are local caught here out of our Sitka fleet. Back in March in 2020, we as an organization realized that we needed to respond to what was going on during the pandemic, and we came up with a seafood initiative, our COVID-19 response initiative, that has turned in since to our seafood donation program. But the three main goals of the program were to provide healthy protein to food insecure individuals and families and communities, support Alaskan fishermen, which was a big one we realized was important as all the markets downturned. There was so much uncertainty, lack of tourism, restaurant closures. And then the third was to educate and inform local, state, and national leaders on the needs of our fishermen as well as our communities. So this initiative turned into the seafood donation program. We utilized the existing infrastructure that we had from the Alaskan's own organization. So we already had the relationships with the fishermen, with the producers, with the processors, and we also had a customer base. So we reached out to local communities, our customer base in the form of, hey, purchase a box for our seafood donation program. And we reached out to local fishermen saying, hey, do you want to donate some of your catch to our program? We're trying to help feed people in our community. So this has since very much evolved. This is the very beginnings of it. And just to kind of give some people an idea where we're at here, we're down in Southeast Alaska. So Sitka's a very small community. We're about 9,000, I think, and dwindling, about 100 miles from anything else. So Juneau's about 100 miles away, just to put it into perspective. So as the calls for assistance increased, because it expanded beyond just our community here in Alaska, it started with Sitka, and we started with us delivering fish directly to the doorsteps of people in our community. Then it started with bulk donations to wellness organizations like the Food Pantry, the Sitka Tribe of Alaska, the Salvation Army, the women's shelters. So we realized we have to grow this and continue on. And how are we going to do that? So with financial support from many partners, including Catch Together, Multiplier, the Alaska Community Foundation, other groups such as the Waves, the Alaska, we were grateful to be able to address this food insecurity issue and also provide support to our fishermen who were facing obviously economic downturns due to the market. So a few examples of this was we were able to supplement the lingcod price with a direct stipend to fishermen through purchasing the component of the sablefish catch that has historically gone to restaurants. So this bycatch product and our direct fishing market for lingcod here in Alaska is almost all restaurant market. So a lot of guys were faced without, I had friends who were fishing that they didn't even have anyone to sell to. No one was buying. So they're coming to dock with this product. They have the rights to fish to. They have nowhere to sell it. So we came up with a way to address this. We used, like I said, grant money with our partners. And a lot of that fish was then turned around and donated to the Wave Foundation, which paired with locally purchased grains from the Pacific Northwest. And they were able to serve hot lunches and distribute food boxes to the Columbia River tribes, as well as other areas in the Pacific Northwest. So another example of what we've done outside of Sitka is in the Kenai Peninsula. So there we saw not only effects of food insecurity due to the pandemic, and a lot of these communities are separated, you know, they're rural, they're only accessed by water or by air. So it's not like they have access to, you know, grocery stores or large food chains or anywhere where they can get their food. There's a big subsistence culture in a lot of these areas. So what we saw was not only were they having issues of food insecurity from the pandemic, they also had subsistence issues where their salmon didn't show up. So I know Hannah talked about the Yukon where their fish weren't there, but the same thing was happening for us in Alaska and a lot of areas this year. So a lot of this specific area that we worked with is Chignik, and their tribal leaders decided to cancel the subsistence harvest to allow for escapement. So they thought it was more important to have the generational return of the salmon than to have one bad year. So they reached out to us and we worked together as well with the same organizations I talked with on the last donation, and also with Northline Seafoods, which is a producer up in the Bristol Bay area who has a fleet that is 90% Alaska Native as well. And we were able to coordinate the delivery of 42,000 pounds of round sockeye to their area. And they actually asked for round sockeye. This was Bristol Bay caught round sockeye because they wanted the same food that they're going to harvest in their subsistence fishery traditionally, and they want to be able to prepare it with their families in the same methods that they would. So we're trying to work within the cultural bounds and traditional bounds, as well as within their needs for food and for food security. Excuse me. All right. So as we've continued on, we've continued to this day to serve meals, we're delivering fish in our community here in Sitka. We did bulk donations to many areas, like the ones I mentioned, as well as the YMCA worked with us to donate seafood to military families in the Anchorage area. We also did bulk donations to communities here in Southeast Alaska, where we had some of our fishermen with freezer trollers take these donations to different communities that were also in need. So weekly, I've been actually helping to do this, deliver food directly to the doorsteps of families in town here in Sitka. We currently have 291 people on our list that we're rotating through and doing deliveries of either 5 to 10 pounds of fish a week, depending on your family size. So we know that in 2020, it's been a bad year for everyone, but we don't see this changing. So we're continuing to receive requests for seafood from tribal entities, coastal communities, and not just Alaska, Pacific Northwest as well. And we found that private funding for these projects was greatly appreciated in 2020. We recognize that the funding will not be available in the future, but the need's going to continue. So on top of the pandemic, climate change is reducing ocean productivity and stressing salmon runs in the Gulf of Alaska. And we anticipate that both commercial and subsistence salmon harvests will continue to decline as a result. So we're expanding our development plan into the future to include more seafood donation program fundraising on local, state, as well as national levels. And if one thing that we've all learned in this year is that the pandemic has highlighted the need to increase regional food security overall, as well as to increase U.S. consumption of seafood. That's a big one that we're really trying to stress. Keep it in our communities, as well as the local communities surrounding us. Seafood's highly nutritious. It has a lower carbon footprint than other forms of protein. And when it's purchased from community-based fishermen, seafood purchasers can help rebuild coastal economies that have been hit hard by this pandemic as well as climate change. So that's our big issue here. We're trying to help not only the people with food insecurity, but also our fishing economies. So I think that more or less sums up what we've been trying to do. And thanks for bearing with me. And also a big thank you to all of our partners and sponsors who've made this possible.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, such a great recap, and just really impressive how you all are sort of multifaceted and, you know, addressing multiple challenges and also taking advantage of new opportunities and partnerships too. So just great inspiring example. I just want to acknowledge that we're coming up on an hour. And so for those of you that need to jump, totally understand, you know, I believe this is being recorded, and, you know, we'll be posting it and making it available afterwards. But for those of you who are able to stick around for a few more minutes, you know, we've got some great questions that have rolled in for all our different speakers. So we're going to spend some time on that. And we also open it up for discussion. If you want to raise your hand and share your story too directly with everyone, we welcome that. But just want to go back to some of the questions that you all have posted here. So let's see. I'm going to go back to Shireen. Got a question. Someone wanting to hear more about the processed products that you produced for shellfish growers. If you could maybe expand on that.
So what we did was it was quahog chowder. That program that we did was for quahog chowder, and that's all we did at that point.
Great. And while you have the mic, what nonprofit did you partner with to help with food distribution to seniors and school kids? And did this connect also with local school efforts to feed families and children during the pandemic?
It absolutely did. We worked with a local organization called Monomoy Community Services, which has been providing family support services for Chatham working families and individuals for the last 47 years. They have a Chatham fund that they had set up, that they put together a meal program, and they started to reach out to restaurants to ask if they would start to cook food for the school children during the times that, you know, for breakfast or for times that our local school could not feed them during closure time. And then we came in as the seafood providers for some of that. We also did, we didn't just do quahog chowder. We also were able to provide sea scallops to some of the restaurants. They were able to make the product, and they were able to give it away free through some anonymous sort of coding that people could sign up and do takeout. So that was great. And then we had a distribution system with our local nonprofits and the school.
Great, thank you. Frank, I want to just go back to you and wondering, you know, looking forward, what does success look like for you and your fishmonger project in the future?
Good question. I think success, well, I know success for us is definitely several co-ops throughout the state, and some of the fisheries that the 4 fishermen operate in, and you know, just food resiliency for the state of Rhode Island is definitely a big part of you know, our success, because, you know, if food resiliency is achieved in Rhode Island, then our fish is on consistent, you know, replicable flows to the community. There's a market, there's the whole distribution model is established, and, you know, there's fishing is resilient again. That really big amount of success for us.
Awesome, thank you. Lauren, just want to be sure we hit all of you here. Question for you. Hold on, sorry. Oh, and it looks like you answered. So yeah, maybe do you want to expand on, Lauren, kind of, what you all are doing to sustain your seafood donation program? Because that seems like maybe one of the biggest
Yeah,
challenges.
no, that's a lot of what Willa's actually doing at the moment. We're up against a lot of grant deadlines. And so she's working really hard to keep funding coming in. We also have a fundraiser that I plan that's in the local community here in Sitka that is going to happen in the next 2 weeks to try and bring more awareness in our community, bring in some more funding. We're continuing to solicit donations through our Alpha membership, our Alaska Longline Fishermen's Association members, as well as our CSF customers through Alaskan Zone. So lots of mediums that we're going through, continuing to partner with other organizations that are also trying to do the same thing to see how we can work together to continue with this. So we're going into 2021 with like armed and just trying to get as much as we can out there and trying to get the word out there and keep it going. So if anyone else has any ideas or partnerships, we're all welcome to. We're all ears here.
Yeah, well, and there's certainly, I think, demand for that kind of program all over the country, both for thinking about fishermen and what they face looking forward, and also consumers. Here in Alaska, at least, the need for food assistance is only growing. And so I think we're all wondering how fisheries can be part of that solution. And I think that's an exciting opportunity for this community. And, how can we all be part of that? Let's see, any other questions? Great, so question here about being able to reach out to our speakers directly, because a lot of you have commented that you see a lot of similarities and parallels. So our hope is this sparks ongoing conversations and partnerships. So we'll be sure to get contact info, or if our speakers actually, I invite you all to post your contact information in the chat bar, and then that way folks know how to reach you in whatever way you prefer. So please do that if you can. Take a minute before we wrap up here. Great. Okay, awesome. Lots of good comments in here. I'm actually going to, I think, turn it over to Tyson. We wanted to spend a few minutes here in closing and sharing with you all some of the exciting milestones that the local catch network that we've achieved just in the last few months, and kind of what we're looking at as local catch network going into the new year, and just some really important and exciting news that we wanted to share. So Tyson, I'm going to hand it off to you for closing.
Good morning, everyone. Great conversation today. Thank you to all of our presenters for all of your time, your energy, your passion, to sharing your stories. I think there's a lot to follow up with here. I see some of the presenters already posting their contact information in the chat channel. So feel free to do that if you're a presenter, so people know where and how to contact you and keep these conversations going. For the local catch executive committee, we do have a couple exciting announcements to make. We've been working hard in the background, and earlier this year, we did submit a grant to the USDA, to their Farmers Market Promotion Program. And we're happy to announce that the local catch network did receive nearly $500,000 to strengthen local and direct seafood marketing in the United States. We're going to use this funding to establish a nationwide cohort-based training and technical assistance program to help everyone increase direct producer to consumer sales, with a focus on operations based in or serving low income and low food access areas. We're also going to be providing tools and services to help fishers and shellfish farmers promote locally and regionally produced seafood. And we'll also be using this funding to strengthen our network further of our direct to consumer seafood operations, and just continuing forward with the momentum that we have, bringing in new members, getting the word out about local catch even more. And the overarching goal of the project essentially is to support a healthy, resilient coastal communities and strengthen America's food systems by increasing our direct producer to consumer seafood sales. So we're excited about that. There's a lot of details that we have to work through as far as those goals and objectives go. Lots of planning to still come. So you can expect more information from us in terms of surveys, maybe some focus group conversations, and especially with opportunities around some of the technical assistance training opportunities as those start to come to light. So over the next 3 or 4 months, you can definitely expect to hear a little bit more. And certainly over the next year, you'll see some of these opportunities start to roll out as the planning process continues to move forward. Really excited about that. We're also really excited to announce that we've hired a coordinator for the local catch network. As many of you know, this has been a very much volunteer network. We haven't had many paid positions in the past. Of course, Joshua Stoll's done an amazing job of holding us together. A lot of support from Brett, Elizabeth. I mean, so many people that we all know and cherish that have come and have gone from many people in the past to our executive committee today. And we're excited to announce that we've hired a coordinator for the network. Her name is Jordan Richards. Excited to be joining the network. Prior to joining the local catch network, she spent 7 years focused on building community-based food systems. Most recently, Jordan served as a regional sustainability coordinator, where she increased local procurement by facilitating connections between stakeholders across the produce supply chain. Jordan has also spent many years as a farmer and co-founder of Growers Cooperative in the Denver area, where she gained experience managing direct-to-consumer outlets, including community-supported agriculture models and farmers markets. Jordan is drawn to the local catch network's innovative efforts to strengthen our local and regional seafood systems. She's looking forward to supporting the network and its efforts to increase transparency across the supply chain, deliver high-quality, equitable food communities, and increase the viability of our small-scale fishers. During her free time, Jordan's like many of us. She likes to get outside and engage in outdoor activities, especially all those that the Colorado area has to offer. And she enjoys spending time with her pup, Peta, her dog. So that's Jordan. Jordan's been on the call with us today. We're not going to have a chance to meet her today, but she has been listening in and has had a small introduction to some of the folks that are part of this network. As we move forward, many of you can expect to see more of Jordan, hear from Jordan, and really excited to kind of keep those connections going. So that's our great news, and it's really exciting things as we move forward. It's exciting to see this network grow, all the energy and support that you've all put into this over the years, continuing to push forward. So thank you all, and thank you everybody for all of your support and energy throughout the years. Yeah, so that's it. That's our exciting news. Thank you all for joining us on the call here today. Feel free to reach out to us at the executive committee with any of your thoughts, questions that you might have. Feel free to reach out to the presenters as well. Keep that connection and that innovation going and moving forward so we can support each other. And as always, feel free to reach out to the entire network with any news you might have, any opportunities you might be thinking about through our local catch network, through our listserv. So great to see you all. Great conversation. Take good care out there. Be well.